Welcome to the Avoidance of Foreclosure and Eviction section of the Dodd-Frank Prep course brought to you by NHNLA. This is section 6.4, Making Home Affordable. The Making Home Affordable program was announced in March 2009, and the centerpiece of the program is the modification plan, also known as HAMP, Home Affordable Modification Program. Now, most servicers participate in the program and are obligated to first evaluate eligible borrowers for HAMP mods before proceeding to consider non-HAMP modification, other workout options, or even foreclosure. The program is slated to end December 31st, 2016. Eligibility for HAMP, and there's two tiers, so we're going to first talk about Tier 1 and then we'll talk about Tier 2 and then we'll go into HAMP 2 and P. So Tier 1, for borrowers who are current or less than 60 days delinquent, the servicer must determine whether a payment default is imminent. Now, what does that mean? What they're thinking is, can the borrower make this payment for real, or is a default for sure going to happen? So common reasons that a borrower might be in imminent danger of default includes an illness in the family, unemployment, underemployment, divorce, or if they know that their interest rate is going to increase in the next 4 months, that could be reasons for imminent default. So there are some other key eligibility requirements for HAMP Tier 1. A, the mortgage payment is greater than 31% of their monthly gross income. The loan had to be originated on or before January 1, 2009. 1 to 4 unit property and principal residence. So we can't use HAMP Tier 1 for investment property. And if you're following along in your book, it's on page 2. Manufactured homes and condos are eligible. The property may not be vacant or condemned, and the borrower must be able to document financial hardship. Eligible first lien mortgages must have an unpaid principal balance equal to or less than what you see here. So for 1 unit, $729,750. For 2 units, $934,200. For a 3 unit property, $1,129,250, and then for a 4 unit property, $1,403,400. Now, one thing that Making Home Affordable instilled was a net present value test. This is the core eligibility requirement under HAMP. And the test compares the net present value of the money the servicer would receive if the loan were modified with what would be received if no modification were made. So basically, in a nutshell, what it's saying is the net present value lets the lender know, okay, which one am I going to make more money doing? Foreclosing or not foreclosing, and modifying the loan. If the servicer can expect a greater return from modifying the mortgage, then the modification is considered to be NPV positive, and the servicer must modify the mortgage absent fraud or prohibition in the securitization of contracts. So basically, if everything's on the up and up and the NPV is positive, then they must modify the loan. If the test produces a negative NPV because the projected return would be greater without a modification, the servicer has an option. They can still modify at their discretion. If the mortgage is serviced for a third-party investor, though, the servicer in this situation must obtain the investor's express permission. So at that point, they can choose either not to modify. If it's up to them, they can choose to modify, or if they have a third-party investor, they can get permission to modify. Denial based on an NPV, on a negative NPV, a notice must give the inputs that went into the NPV calculation. Now, what they won't do is give you their analysis, but they will tell you what information they put in it to arrive at that analysis, if that makes sense. So they have to tell you what interest rate they used, what borrower income they used, what estimate they used for real estate taxes and insurance, and any other information they used in that analysis. Details of the factors to be considered under the program are not available, like I said, to the public, but you can, thankfully, the U.S. Department of Treasury put out this website, www.checkmympv.com, and you can just plug in those factors and see what you come out with. What's important about this last screen about the denial is the factors that they give you. Because like I said earlier, we're all human, we all make mistakes. A servicer could have inadvertently put in incorrect information and gotten a negative MPV. So you want to make sure you ask for that information. Don't just assume because it was denied based on MPV that the buck stops there. Go ahead and request this information and run it yourself. Make sure for sure that that this is a denial. All right, so now we have HAMP Tier 2. Now on June 1st, 2012, the Obama administration expanded the population of borrowers that may be eligible for a HAMP mod. And this included non-owner residences. This was a huge addition to the HAMP program because we were seeing quite a bit of it, especially in areas where people had to move to find employment, and so they rented out their previous home. We were seeing a lot of that. Borrowers also previously denied for debt ratios under 31% could qualify under HAMP Tier 2. So if the house payment was, say, 30%, you could qualify. Borrowers denied HAMP due to HAMP trial defaults. So they were in a HAMP trial and they defaulted. They can reapply and go under HAMP Tier 2. And then borrowers who defaulted on a previous Tier 1 HAMP mod. So if they'd gone through the trial and were actually in a permanent mod, then they could, a permanent mod and failed or were not successful, then they could come back and reapply for HAMP Tier 2. However, the caveat for that is the new payment must be 10% or lower. The trial period plan. You'll also hear it referred to as a TPP. Prior to a permanent mod, a trial period plan must be completed by making monthly payments for a 3-month period. Borrowers are not required to sign any documentation and return the notice. They only need to send the first payment by the due date, and then they must make all the trial payments on time. Now you may ask, okay, so what happens after the first 3 months and they haven't got a permanent mod? Should they just stop and wait? Absolutely not. They need to continue making that payment until the permanent mod is in place. To receive a permanent loan mod, the borrower must be current at the end of the trial. And like I said, in order for them to be current, they have to keep making those payments. And I know sometimes we've seen people in trial mods at 6 months, 12 months, but advise your clients to keep making that payment. Current means that the borrower has made each trial period payment by the last day of the month in which it was due. Now let me say that again. Current means that the borrower has made each trial period payment by the last day of the month in which it was due. So ideally, we want our clients to make their payment on the 1st. But if something happens, car breaks down, there's an unexpected expense, and they can't get the payment out to the 15th, they are still current. The permanent mod also has a standard modification waterfall. And let me see, I want to share with you what page that's on. I want to say it is page 4 and 5. A sequence of steps to reduce the borrower's payment to 31% of gross income. So first, they're going to look at, for the permanent mod, they're going to look at capitalizing any accrued interest, escrow advances to third parties, servicer advances paid to third parties, etc. So capitalization, we understand that already. We've talked about capitalization. So that's the first thing that on a permanent mod with HAMP they're going to look at doing. The second is a rate reduction. It can be reduced to as low as 2% to reach the affordability target, which is 31%, right? Unless it's Tier 2, and then it can be lower than 31%, but they can go down to 2% on the interest rate. And that'll be fixed for 5 years, and then it can adjust upwards up to 1% until it reaches the interest rate cap. Now let me repeat that, up to 1%. So that doesn't mean that it will go up, that it will always be a 1% increase each year. It may be 0.5% increase. It may be 0.25% increase, but it maxes out at 1%. The third step in the waterfall is extending the term. So if the 2% interest rate does not result in an affordable payment, 31% of the gross monthly income, then the servicer will extend the term of the loan to a maximum of 40 years. And if necessary, defer payment on a portion of the principal. Not write it off, but possibly defer it. If payment on a portion of the principal is deferred, no interest will accrue on the forbearance amount. So while that principal is deferred, it's at zero interest. This amount will be a balloon payment. And what that means is at the end of the mortgage term, that balloon payment is due. And it's due also when the loan is paid off or if it's refinanced. Now, let's talk a little bit about the second lien modification program, and that starts at the very bottom, I think, of page 5. Yes, the very bottom of page 5. Well, actually, the title is at the bottom of page 5. So go ahead and turn your books with me to page 6. After implementing HAMP, Treasury announced a separate program to deal with second liens in August 2009. And this was very crucial because a lot of purchase money mortgages were first and second mortgages. And so that it was becoming evidently clear that we had to deal with these second mortgages somehow. So Treasury said, all right, we're going to release the second lien mortgage modification program. I'm getting a little tongue-tied here, bear with me, and that's called 2MP. Now, a borrower cannot get a modification of a second lien mortgage unless the first lien is being in a trial period plan or has been modified under HAMP. So they've got to be in a trial or permanent mod in order to qualify for the 2MP. All loans modified under the program must result in a closed-end second mortgage. So you can't have a line of credit and modify it and still have a line of credit. Anyone know why? Mainly because a line of credit, as you pay it down, you can continue using it, can't you? Absolutely. And so they said, well, you know, if you're in financial hardship and we're helping you out, we don't want you then to run it back up. So it has to be a closed-end second. And the waterfall steps, I was right, are outlined on pages 5 and 6 of the manual. And they're essentially the same as the first lien HAMP mod. Now let's see, it said, please note the difference in interest rate reduction in step 1. Let's see, interest rate reduction. So let's take a quick look at step 1. The standard to modify a second lien mortgage requires that the servicer to first capitalize any accrued interest and advances to third parties. Only those third-party fees are reasonable and necessary may be capitalized. Late fees and other ancillary fees, i.e. insufficient fund fees, over limit fees, etc., may not be capitalized and must be waived by the servicer unless the borrower fails to complete the 2MP. Next, the borrower's interest rate must be reduced to 1% for amortizing loans. So that's what it meant, step 2. My apologies. Step 2. So, you know, in the HAMP first mortgage, it can go down as low as 2%, while on the second mortgage, it can go as low as 1%. So just a note for you there. For interest-only loans, servicer have the option of converting the loan to an amortizing loan at 1% or keeping the interest-only feature and reducing the interest rate to 2%. For partially amortizing loans, such as convertible HELOCs or adjustable HELOCs, if 50% or more of the lien based on unpaid principal balance is amortizing, the servicer may reduce the interest rate to 1%. If less than 50% of the loan is amortizing, then the servicer will have the same options available for interest-only loans. So again, that's on the bottom of page 6. All right. The Home Affordable Unemployment Program, and that starts on page 7. A forbearance program, meaning the loan is not permanently modified, just that the servicer agrees to take a lower payment for a period of time. That's what this unemployment program is about. Now, to qualify, the borrower must have a documented financial hardship, where have we heard that before, and not have sufficient savings to make the monthly payment. because of course if they can make the payment, the servicer wants them to do that. But if they can't make the payment but they can document they've had a financial hardship, then they can qualify for the Home Affordable Unemployment Program. The borrower must also be unemployed as of the date of the unemployment request and be entitled to receive unemployment benefits in the month of the unemployment forbearance effective date, or receive unemployment benefits within 6 months prior to the request for unemployment, but the benefits are currently expired. So if they previously qualified, if they previously got unemployment within the 6 months prior to the request for the Home Affordable Unemployment Program, they qualify. Or if as of the date of the request, they're entitled to receive the benefits and then they receive the benefits in the month that the program becomes effective, they qualify. Now, HAFA, the Home Affordable Foreclosure Alternatives. Under HAFA, a portion of the program, borrowers are offered a short sale or deed in lieu of foreclosure as a means of avoiding foreclosure. The program is part of HAMP, and servicers may not solicit a borrower for the program until they have been evaluated for a HAMP mod. So the servicer has to look at their situation and see, do they qualify for HAMP first? If they don't, then they can look and see if they qualify for HAFA or other non-HAMP alternatives. So, short sales. With a HAFA short sale, the servicer allows the borrower to sell the property for less than the total amount due on the mortgage. The servicer will accept the net proceeds from the sale of the property to satisfy the total amount due on the first mortgage. Servicers have 10 business days to respond after receiving a request for approval of a short sale, and the approval will state the minimum net sales proceeds. So the approval will let them know this is how much we need to make in order to proceed with this. And again, if you're following along in your book, HAFA starts on page 8 and the short sales continue on page 9. The approval notice, the net sales requirement, is effective for 120 calendar days but may be extended an additional 8 months at the discretion of the servicer. So again, the approval is good for 4 months. After that, you got to get approval from the servicer to extend it. Deed in lieu. The borrower voluntarily transfers ownership of mortgaged property to the servicer in full satisfaction of the total amount due on the first mortgage. Title must be free of any additional mortgages, liens, or any other encumbrances, because this is just deed in lieu of the first mortgage. Servicers will usually require that the borrower attempt to sell the property through a short sale before agreeing to accept a deed in lieu. Now keep in mind, even though the servicer will accept this as full satisfaction, there may be some tax implications for your homeowner. So please, if you're not a certified tax preparer, refer them to a tax professional. HARP, Making Home Affordable Refinance Program. This starts at the bottom of page 9. The Making Home Affordable Refinance Program, known as HARP, is designed to assist homeowners who are current on their mortgage but wish to refinance into a more affordable loan. The homeowner must be current. And by current, we mean no more than one 30-day late in the last 12 months. This refinance program applies only to first mortgages, and it has no maximum LTV on fixed rate mortgages and no minimum credit score, which is really nice. There is a maximum LTV of 105% on adjustable rate mortgages. That is the end of Unit 6A, Foreclosure Basics. Thank you.